Hello, and welcome to session 5 of this video series on learning the Portable Stimulus Standard, or PSS. I'm Tom Fitzpatrick, CEO of Big Fish EDA Consulting, on behalf of the Accellera Systems Initiative and the members of the Portable Stimulus Working Group. In this session on actions and activities, we'll talk about how to encapsulate behaviors in PSS using actions, how to schedule those behaviors with an activity, and then how to define the control flow within an activity. Let's get started. We saw earlier that behaviors in PSS are described using actions. Basic behaviors are defined using atomic actions, which are mapped to a specific target implementation. We use the action keyword and curly braces to wrap the action contents. Actions can be parameterized like we saw earlier in the data type session and can be derived from a base type, which we'll discuss more in session 8. Here we see a config UART action, which declares a couple of random fields. The solver will choose random values for these fields when the action is included in a generated scenario. We can also define a transmit action, in this case with a single 8-bit random field. And we can use a template parameter on the action, which in this case will default to an 8-bit vector. This makes the action reusable if the allowable data size changes from project to project. For now, we'll just use the simple form. And finally, we have the receive action with its own rand field. In this case, we also include an exec body block, which is where you'd put the actual target-specific implementation. All atomic actions will have an exec body block. We'll see later how you can add exec blocks to the other atomic actions without changing the original declaration. Compound actions encapsulate higher-level behaviors that schedule the execution of other actions using a PSS activity statement, which is typically how you model the critical intent of your test scenario. Since an action is either compound or atomic, the activity keyword is mutually exclusive with an exec body block. We'll start the activity with a sequence block that will start the config action, which must complete before we can move on. We can execute actions in parallel, which means that neither will start until the preceding action is completed, and they must both complete before we can move on to the next action. Also, there can't be any ordering dependencies between the branches of a parallel statement. We refer to the statements in an activity as action traversals because we're not really executing anything. We're just defining the schedule the solver will use to build the actual implementation. The sequence keyword is optional, so you can describe the same scenario more concisely as we see here. The schedule statement tells the solver to traverse the subactions in any legal order. So in addition to running TX and RX in parallel, we could also traverse them in sequence. And in the absence of any other constraints, we can also traverse RX before TX in sequence. So the schedule statement will choose a random order of its subactions that is legal according to whatever constraints may also be defined. A select block randomly chooses one subaction to traverse. In this example, the solver will traverse either TX or RX. The if-else statement lets you choose a subaction based on a field value. In this example, if full duplex is true, we run TX and RX in parallel. If it's false, we use a select to choose one or the other. This gives you conditional control flow within your activity driven by randomized fields. The match statement is like a switch statement in C or a case statement in System Verilog. It lets you choose one of several branches based on a field value. Here we've got several different transmit action types and a random size field. The match statement will look at the size field and branch accordingly. When size equals 1, we take the TX small branch. When size is 3 or 5, we go to TX medium. For size values 7 through 9, we use TX large. And the default branch catches everything else using TX any. So the solver randomizes the size field and the match statement routes the execution to the appropriate transmit action. The repeat statement gives you loops in your activity. You specify an iteration count and the body executes that many times. So we repeat the TX action count times, and the width constraint lets us traverse a random sized burst of transmit operations, each sending a different byte value. Repeat while adds a conditional loop. It keeps going as long as the condition holds. This is different from repeat, which has a fixed count. In this example, we have a guard action with a random 4-bit value. The loop traverses the guard action followed by TX, and it then checks the while condition. If it's true, we loop back again, and if it's false, we exit. This is great for modeling protocols where you don't know ahead of time how many iterations you're going to need. For each iterates over the elements of a collection. Here we have a random array of 16 8-bit values, and the for each loop walks through j from 0 to 15, hitting each corresponding element of the array and assigning it to tx byte. We can also use an iterator identifier, in this case I, so it's more convenient to refer to each value as we go through the loop. Replicate is different from repeat. It's a generative in-place expansion. So while repeat creates a runtime loop, replicate statically expands at compile time. In this example, we replicate two action traversals inside a parallel block where each replicated instance of tx gets its own constraint. And if we change the parallel block to a sequence, the replicate statement generates a sequence of operations instead of parallel ones. The key here is that replicate creates independent action instances at elaboration time, which lets the solver reason about each one separately. Actions are referred to using action handles. All handles reset to uninitialize when you enter an activity, so we kind of start each activity from scratch. We can instantiate the config UART action and assign it the handle CFG, and that lets us refer to the action by its handle in constraints or inside the activity. The action itself will be randomized when the handle is traversed. We can also traverse actions by type using the do keyword with an anonymous action traversal statement. And we can add a label to an anonymous traversal, creating a named reference, in this case T1, so you can refer back to it later. So using the label, we can constrain Rx byte to equal T1's TX byte. Now let's step back and look at the big picture. PSS models are declarative. This means that a PSS model describes your verification intent, including the rules the solver will need to generate legal scenarios that match your intent. The model gets compiled into an intermediate format that represents your intent and identifies the holes that need to be filled to make the scenario legal. Then the solve platform takes over, and it solves the constraints, filling in all those random fields and making scheduling decisions. Next, the code generator creates a concrete implementation of the solved scenario, where it assembles all the atomic action implementations according to the activity schedule defined by the model. The runtime platform then executes it against your DUT. So the same PSS model can target different platforms and generate different legal scenarios each time, all from one declarative description. The randomization is done at solve time, so each generated scenario is, in effect, a directed test. When all the generated solutions are run in a regression, you get a much larger set of legal tests, all from a relatively simple PSS abstract model. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found this session interesting. Please be sure and watch the next video in this series on PSS communication. Hope to see you there.